Okay, so I think we're ready to start. So welcome everybody. Maybe Matt, if you could show the second slide. I know that many of you are now regulars at these meetings, but there might be a couple of people who are new, so I'll just talk a little bit about what's going to happen. After I've just explained what's going to happen, I'm going to hand over to Andrew Lunn to lead us in prayer to start with. Then Cecilia, our speaker, is going to talk for about 40 minutes. I'll introduce her and then hand over to her. And then there'll be about 5 minutes for questions and answers to her. She'll then speak briefly, more reflecting on how her science interacts with her faith, and particularly how it affects her, the way she prays. And that will lead on to some time in breakout rooms when you'll be split into groups to have a little bit of a chat amongst yourselves. We'll then come back for a feedback for about 10 minutes after that, and then some closing devotions just to round things off. I'm hoping we'll be finishing round about 9 o'clock. So this should take about an hour and a half, and I guarantee to finish by 1:15. So we certainly won't let it run any further than that. So that's what's going to happen. Without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Andrew Lunn, who is the chairman of the Manchester district of the Methodist Church, and he's going to lead us in our opening devotion. So over to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Richard. I know that Cecilia is going to be speaking to us, at least in part, about water and the freshwater resources of our planet. So I'm going to start by just reading a few words from Psalm 65 and a short reading from Mark's Gospel about something that happened on the freshwater lake of Galilee, and then a short prayer. You visit the earth and water it. You make it very plenteous. The river of God is full of water. You prepare grain for your people, for so you provide for the earth. You drench the furrows and smooth out the ridges. You soften the ground with showers and bless its increase. You crown the year with your goodness, and your paths overflow with plenty. On that day, when evening had come, he said to them, "Let us go across to the other side." And leaving the crowd behind, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was. Other boats were with him. A great gale arose, and the waves beat into the boat, so that the boat was already being swamped. But he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. And they woke him up and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" He woke up and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." Then the wind ceased and there was a dead calm. He said to them, "Why are you afraid? Have you still no faith?" And they were filled with great awe and said to one another, "Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" Gracious God, we thank you for the gift of water running in our streams and rivers and watercourses, filling fishing ponds and lakes, flowing out into the sea. We thank you that it is part of the great cycle of life by which you have enriched this planet. But we know also that it is part of our human sinfulness which we must confess. That now, through climate change, Many have either too much water or too little. In different ways, we pollute and spoil or change the cycles which give us life. As we turn to you for support and help through prayer, remind us that although you calm the storms within us, you do it that we might focus afresh on the ways we need to take responsibility for ourselves and our actions, that we might be part of that movement in which you send forth your Spirit and renew the face of the earth. We pray for Cecilia today as she comes to speak with us, and ask that through her words, we might be able to listen for your will and your way. We pray in Jesus' name and in the power of your Spirit. Amen.
Thank you very much, Andrew. So it's my pleasure to introduce Cecilia Medupin to you. She's a lecturer in the Department of Earth and Environmental Sciences at the University of Manchester. She comes to that post having previously worked with the United Kingdom Environment Agency at Sellafield, and with other companies in both the UK and the Nigeria where she comes from. She's also lectured at the National Open University in Nigeria, and her PhD examined the impact of point source pollution on an urban river. As well as the science of rivers, she's also passionate about citizen science as a way of engaging with school students, women and minority communities in particular. She's passionate about the involvement of research in knowledge exchange and public engagement. An example of this is that recently she engaged with children and young adults from St. Joseph's and Edward's Roman Catholic School in Longsight, going into their river to find out what was in it and to have explained about the significance of the things that they found there. So sounds as if it was great fun. She's also convener of Women in Environmental Sciences. That's a UK-wide organisation, and the co-lead of the National Environmental Research Council's research project, the National Community for Engaging Environments. In a recent paper, she explored the role of women in environmental sciences, and particularly their role in working towards achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So it's for that reason that I've asked her to talk about the inclusive aspects of science, and the fact that when it comes to climate change, we're all in this together. So that's the title we've negotiated for her talk. We're all in this together. And I'm going to hand over to Cecilia now to share her slides and to talk to us. Thanks very much, Cecilia.
Thank you, Richard, and good evening, everyone. Thank you, Andrew, for the prayers. That was much appreciated. Well, without wasting much of your time, I'll share my slides. So Richard has introduced that we are all in this together. In other words, the challenges that assail us, the benefits that assail us, we're all partakers in the planet. So these are the ways I have divided what I'm going to say today. I'll have a brief discussion on the science, the challenges, and the strategies for management, and then coming into the concept of we are in this together, and then I summarize. So at the end of part one, you have a chance to ask the questions, and then I'll now briefly link the part one to the part two, where we look at the faith dimension and then the reflection on prayers. And then after that, I'll have a concluding part, so that we all have something to take home or something to think about or something to reflect at the end of the talk. So I hope you enjoy it. So just to give you a brief introduction to the fact that I come from Nigeria and that we're in this together, the challenges that assail Nigeria, the global south, and UK and Europe and globally are all part of who we are, and where we hope to be. So I am from northern Nigeria. I am from this place, from northern Nigeria, and have worked in the south in Lagos, and then have done some university work, working with the National Open University, and at the same time working with the National Youth Service Corps, where you have to serve your country compulsorily for 1 year, like a paramilitary service in the East. So I have an understanding of different cultures, different environmental challenges, and at the same time having an understanding that Nigeria is one of the biggest, is the largest country in Africa. Looking at the population, we have 1.3 billion people, and then in West Africa we have 380 million, and then Nigeria constitutes over 200 million. This is over maybe about 3 times the UK. And then we have issues of desertification in the north, and then the issues of erosion in the south, and then other environmental challenges that also pervade places like the UK. And so coming to the UK, I have worked in different places and have an understanding of the different zones, the different geographical zones in the UK. I've worked in the north in Cumbria, and then in the Midlands with the Environment Agency, and then with the research in the Northwest. And so through the research, through other activities, I have been involved or have traveled to different parts of the UK and then some parts of Europe, either for teaching and other parts of the world for carrying out activities of public engagement or knowledge exchange. So you can see that we are all in this together, irrespective of where we are. Talking about Nigeria, there are so many environmental issues that are similar maybe to other African countries. Water is one of the major issues, and that's the one I'm going to focus on in this talk. We have people who have to wake up very early in the morning to go to wells to fetch water. In rural areas, we have people advancing to using jerry cans to fetch water, and then you can see people queuing to fetch water here. And then over time, we have people who developed into vendors to collect water, which they sell to people. And then we have people who over time have some funds and are able to provide tanks for their homes. Most homes have tanks. Most homes have water treatment plants managed by themselves. And then we also have, while we are doing this, there are people who use water bodies to do certain things, but close to this, you are able to see people dumping things in it. These are some of the challenges amongst other challenges that affect water. In other words, those who are less, who can't afford much will have to suffer more. But why is fresh water important? Some of these things I'm saying may not be so new to us. These are things we are already aware of, things that are already part of us. So here, fresh water makes up a very small fraction of the Earth's water. The global water has about 97% made up of seawater. And out of that, we have the remaining 3% for lakes, rivers, and the glaciers. And with fresh waters, the rivers, we have less than 1.01% of fresh water. That means what we have available for everybody's use is so limited, and there's going to be a challenge of conflict with water available for everybody's use. To bring it into context, what I'm talking about is that here we have competing water uses globally. We have 70% of water that is used for agricultural purposes. And then we have 22% for industrial use. And then 8% is for domestic activities. And then if we look at the low and medium income countries, we'll see that 82% of that water is used for agricultural purposes. Some of these are for, mechanized farming and production of crops that are exported to different parts of the world. And then we have 10% for industrial activities and then 8% for domestic use. So let's look at the high income countries. We have 59% of water used for industrial activities. We have 11% for domestic use and 30, I beg your pardon, 59% for industry, and then 30% for agriculture and 11% for domestic activities. So what this means is that in the high income countries, we still have a bit of leverage for domestic use, water for domestic use, compared to the low and medium income countries. What this also means is that in the high income countries, there is a tendency that they can transfer water from the low and medium countries into these areas. That means the more money you have, the more you are able to manage some issues around you. And in the lower income countries, there is a tendency that there is increased urbanized, increased population coupled with areas that are urbanized, but then in slums, and then with other challenges of limited resources, competing resources. Meanwhile, when I mentioned the population of Nigeria, I didn't also mention the fact that there is also a limited land mass, for which people can live within the country. So that means there are going to be continuous competition for resources, including water. So in order to look at different ways of managing freshwater resources, my own interest is in the ecological aspect, looking at the state of pollution, monitoring and assessment. And so my interest is looking at how the organisms, how the biodiversity of freshwater can be managed so that the water can be good for everybody's use. And then at the same time, is also good for not only the living, not only for human beings, but also for other aspects of the environment to be sustained. So you can see, I have put here some good pictures of organisms. I have here the flathead mayfly, and then on the bottom right, I have the freshwater shrimps. So as beautiful as these organisms are, you can see one is like a comma-shaped one, I called it a flathead. They are actually found in rivers, at the bottom of rivers, at the bottom of sediments. So you may not see them if you go past rivers. You may not see them if the water is so polluted. You may not even see them even if you look at it like this. But these are found at the bottom of sediments and takes a bit of technique to collect them. And as important as they are used as indicators of pollution. They perform all our other functions, but they are used as indicators of pollution if we want to check the state of our waters. Another important aspect is that these organisms that I've just shown you play certain roles in the breakdown. They perform a lot of ecosystem services. They break down the organisms, they break down the vegetation into small, such that this can be used as food by some of them. Some of them are shredders, some of them are grazers, some of them are filterers, some of them are collectors, some of them are predators. So that if you see those organisms, you wouldn't know that they are performing as much activities in the water. But what is important is that in this circumstance, giving you the trophic level, it tells us the state of nutrition, the level at which an organism occupies in the food chain, the trophic status, the position it occupies. So that here you can see the worms. These are the oligochaetes. These are predated upon by the fish. Then we have the freshwater shrimp, which feeds on the detritus, and then we have other secondary consumers. So if you look at here, we have the benthic pathway, we have the pelagic pathway. These benthic pathway are the pathway where organisms are found at the bottom of the sediment. These ones are found at the top of sediment, or at the top of the water body. So these ones, you see them in conditions where the water is not so fast, it's not moving so fast like your lakes, like your ponds. But in this, and you're likely to find these benthic diatoms in water bodies that are not so fast moving, fast flowing. So if you look at it carefully, you will see that there are some organisms that will predate on the vegetations, on the plants, on the water plants, on the plants that are dropping into the rivers so that they can feed. They will shred it, and the other organisms feed on what has been shredded, and then like that, they now sustain the system. But what happens is, while they are feeding, there are also some that are predating on these lower organisms and actually recycle, how would you put it? They are excreting their products into the water. So the excretion helps the nutrient cycling within the water. The level at which the water is being used, is being broken down, is also as a result of the activities of these macroinvertebrates. These macroinvertebrates I showed you also are important where the substrate is good, is favorable for them. Some of them you find them in sandy conditions. Some of them you find them in salt, in muddy conditions. Some of them in clay, in gravel, or stones. What I want us to take home here is that if these systems here are not sustained, are not managed, the tendency for fish to predate on the lower organisms will be low. The tendency for other higher animals like the birds, the kingfisher, to feed on this fish will be limited. And man, which is at the top helm of the ecosystem, will not have enough fish to eat. What are the challenges that could affect this? The challenges that could affect this system could be pollution, could be different human impacts such as urbanization, abstraction, over abstraction of our water resources, and the fact that we keep building in systems, building upon river locations so that there is no continuity. We may not even see where the river is flowing to or from. So it is important for us to know that our freshwater biodiversity is as important as the water. So these are some of the challenges. These are some of the challenges in our water bodies. Some of these challenges are known to us in the UK. Some of these, you will hear them by chance from elsewhere. The combined sewer overflow is a system whereby the water is able to collect, it's a system, it's like a storage tank that is able to collect waste for sewage or from industrial waste over time, so that when there is excess rainfall, it stores it in a period, and then the valves are released so that the water is discharged. If this is not controlled, when we have storms, it will backflow into people's cellars, it will backflow into people's houses. And then we have the challenge of urban runoff that are untreated, unfiltered, they just go direct into the rivers. And then we have wastewater treatment works. The effluent coming out of wastewater treatment works may not be treated enough to the point whereby they are pure, because they are going into the rivers and we expect some level of flow to dilute them. But this may not 100% be the case. So in some cases, we've had effluent being released with concentrations higher than standard requirements. And then with the combined sewer overflows, we have issues where some people have reported, seeing raw sewage, raw, things from your toilet entering into rivers. And there had been a lot of studies at the Thames and here at Manchester. So these are some of the issues that pervade our water system. And then we have, in some cases, you see people dumping stuff in waters. It's not so common nowadays, but you will see that there are subtle other issues that are affecting our fresh waters. I'm sure some of us have read in the dailies, in the tabloids in the UK recently, where they said we have illegal discharges that are unreported. These are some of the issues. And then we have canalized systems. You can see this is so natural. It looks beautiful to people who like everything looking perfect. But for environmentalists, for ecologists, for people who study river systems, you will see that this is a canalized river. So it loses the vegetation to which organisms can enjoy and grow and reproduce and actually have as their own systems, their own niches. So what are the effects? Some of the effects I have mentioned. They will release organic industrial pollutants into our water. Biodiversity is reduced. And again, it's not as interesting for people to look at because everything just looks very concrete, very much impervious that water cannot pass through in most urbanized areas. So what we see is just some things like this. And of course, with illegal dumping of waste is also a challenge of regulation or behavioral activities, and it reduces flow for when we have issues of flooding. So giving us an example of the studies I have carried out, I'm only just giving us insights into the things I do, not the details of it. So with pollution, we are likely, we see opportunities for maybe dilution that would have treated the water naturally. But we also see circumstances whereby this has not happened, where there's excess pollution. And with excess pollution, like sewage from houses or discharges from industries, we see that our fresh waters have high level of reduced level of dissolved oxygen. You know, for us human beings, without oxygen, we can't survive properly. So in this circumstance, there is a reduction of organisms, a reduction of this saturated oxygen available for these organisms to survive. So that kills some of the organisms, it kills some of these macroinvertebrates, reduces their diversity and abundance. But what you will also notice is that when we carry out analysis of these rivers, we will see that sometimes we are seeing some with a very reduced concentration of dissolved oxygen. We can see organisms like the bloodworm, like the water louse, and then even some worms. This is because they are more tolerant of such reduced concentrations of dissolved oxygen, reduced nutrient availability, and so many other things. Another thing that comes to mind is the fact that areas that are canalized, areas that are so concreted, we have a reduced number of organisms in them compared to areas that have not been. And for those of us who know Manchester well, or maybe there are other case studies of other rivers within the UK, there is a place called the Medlock, which is in East Manchester. It runs from the east of Manchester down into the city center. There was a place called, around the Phillips Park and the Clayton Vale. Some years ago, the Environment Agency decided to remove the bricks so that they can see the possibility of restoring the river back to its natural state. Prior to this time, they had everything was concreted with some red bricks, but by the time they removed the red bricks, we could see a regeneration of those areas. In fact, they recorded the fact that there were kingfisher birds found in those locations. These are small case studies, but it actually gave us hope that we can actually restore our systems. And those activities were actually carried out with the Environment Agency, liaising with the partnership groups within these localities. So how do we protect our fresh water? There are diverse ways we could protect our water. I've mentioned the fact that we monitor our systems, that we monitor for the temperature, for the conductivity, the pH, and that we monitor for the biological variables, which could be the macroinvertebrates, which I've just shown you. And then some people will measure the macrophytes, that's the water plants. Some people will measure we assess the fish conditions. There are some of us here who are into some of these activities, either for pleasure or as work. And so we protect our freshwater diversity through policies. There are policies in place. We have the biodiversity action plans, which is an offshoot. I haven't mentioned it on this slide, which is an offshoot of how we can protect our habitats. So in each country, in each locality, we have the biodiversity action plans. So in Manchester, there are UK biodiversity action plans, which feeds into controlling our biodiversity, either in the water or in the terrestrial spaces. So with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, some of us are aware already that there are particular goals that identify certain aspects. Here, we are looking at water, which is the goal 6, and then water and sanitation. And then goal 14 is looking at the ones for life below water. And so we have environmental regulation and enforcement, which is carried out by different countries, but the rate at which regulation takes place varies. So within the UK, prior to Brexit, we were in compliance to the European Union Water Framework Directive, so that it was transposed into UK laws as European Union Water Framework Directive regulations. But that one expects you to have water bodies to have good ecological status, so that both the physical, chemical, and the biological have to be good. But in the circumstances where they had done the measurement, we discovered, and the Environment Agency discovered, that it's difficult for some of our urban rivers to comply to that standard. But now, with the country now out of the European Union, the UK has a 25-year environment plan, so that within this period, they would like to restore our waters back to what it should be naturally. Another way is through the partnership groups. We have catchment partnership groups in different parts of the UK. And this catchment partnership group, they have different people who are members. We have the local authorities, we have community groups, we have academics, we have farmers, we have water companies. There are many people who are members of this partnership group. So they come together to improve our water environment. So that they come under the auspice of a project called the catchment-based approach. So the catchment-based approach is the catchment, for those people who are not within the UK, will be called a drainage basin. So the aim is we're able to manage our water systems with ideas of different disciplines, different people working together, collaborating together, so that they protect our water, not only for the present, but for the future. So that aspect of looking, that ecological way of looking at management is actually the way forward. And we can no longer work in silos, working in what we know, but working interdisciplinary with other people to achieve a common good. And so we also have citizen science and public engagement. With the citizen science, I think increasingly we are beginning to see that there is a need to support the regulators. There is a need to support the researchers who are doing work. And we need that form of communication to people who do not do the same things as we do. So we have the public engagement. So we are still on it together. So in a bid to protect our freshwater biodiversity, we need some connection. And why is this connection important? I have brought this, this icon in the middle to show us that everybody is talking about sustainable development goals. Yes, sustainable development is the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the future generations from meeting their own needs. That is very good. But the issue is that how do we really do that? So one of the goals of one of the action plans of the SDG of the United Nations is that in the course of trying to protect our biodiversity, trying to protect our environment, we do not want to leave anyone behind. We do not want to leave the vulnerable groups. We do not want to leave the disadvantaged groups. We all want to go together because we are all in this together. The challenge of the planet, the people, how people move, how people partner, we are all together. So they brought about these 5 P's. And as you can see them here, the planet, the people, prosperity, peace, and partnership, so that nobody should be left behind. Yes, we need to protect the planet. We need to maintain the temperature. We need to maintain the ecological state of the planet such that it is beneficial to the people. And the people will be able to function in whatever they do in a very good way, in a healthy environment, and they are healthy themselves. And so for that reason, part of the Sustainable Development Goals had that there is an aim to end poverty, hunger in all its forms and in dimensions. This may not be possible, in its entirety, but it gives us scope to think within our space what we can do. And then as people prosper, as people are healthy, they're able to think properly, they're able to think beyond their spaces, they're able to think beyond poverty, then they are prosperous enough, because our environment will be better if people can enjoy prosperous and live fulfilling lives. So this kind of prosperity can also be enhanced through the transfer of knowledge from one point to another, to transfer of technology. And while this is being discussed, then we have peace. We need peace to achieve sustainable development. People need to be at peace, peace in your heart, peace in your soul, peace in your environment, peace in your nation. And then you can start thinking of sustainable ideas that can actually build us up, because we're all in it together. And then with the partnership. So the partnership, if we are going to succeed, we will need to partner with groups, so that we have a strengthened solidarity in communities, in groups, between researchers and non-practitioners. So all of this, the concept of leaving no one behind, is also the concept of looking to include, to be inclusive of the different dimensions of things with which we are involved. The planet is what we want to protect, but we also need to consider the people, wherever they may be, the prosperity of the people, the peace for all of us, and we can partner effectively. So another way, so in thinking about something like this, we say, okay, how do we start? Maybe from below, what can we do? There are aspects of citizen science where we can plug into research with researchers and then with public engagement. So now looking at the public engagement, this is one of the public engagement activities I have been involved in with the university. So you can see some of these organisms were what the students were looking at in the pond. If you are not aware of something like this, you wonder, why are they gathered here? What are they looking at? But you see the beauty of these organisms. Can you see how intricate they have been designed? You know, the students are looking at how much things they can get out. They are appreciative of what they can find. You know, it's a thing of beauty, it's a thing of wonder, it's a thing of surprise. That is one aspect that actually helps us to enjoy what we are doing. And then another one is this one. You know, this is with the university, we were connecting with children from the local school, you know, schools where you regard as minority areas. And the university brought in the students, their parents were in one part of the quad, and they were just looking, identifying the organisms, drawing, painting. It was an opportunity for the students to learn in an enthusiastic way. And because we are looking to sustain our planet, these children will grow older, will grow old soon. You know, the lady who presented last week was talking about the questions the young people were asking. There are certain questions these children are going to ask. So this kind of opportunity provides them with an early chance to speak, engage in a way that they will not normally do at home, so that we build a better and informed, educated citizens of tomorrow. And so we also have here, we have the local communities in Manchester. Here is a Moorside. Moorside is regarded as one of the areas of, one of the deprived areas in Manchester, in the UK, as well as Manchester. So in some cases, they are regarded as the hard to reach. So we were invited, the university, the Department of Environmental Science were invited to present a stand with community perspectives. So what we did was to go with university cloth. You can see the purple, you know, and it was written, boldly written, University of Manchester. So that already on its own brought people to come, to speak, to wonder, what are we doing? What are we there to, what are we showing people? What are they doing? And then who are you? What are you doing? And then with my other colleague. And so it was an opportunity to speak to people. It was an opportunity to show them dimensions of what we do, what is in their environment. Because don't forget, these areas, because it's like deprived, they are not 100% close to rivers. They are not 100% close to water bodies. This kind of ecological study is not something they might be interested in. Some parents will groom their children to read other courses, but maybe not even ecology, which is an area that integrates aspects. So here I was busy standing, you know, attending to people with my other colleague. And then a girl came, she was about 14, 15. And then she looked at me, looked at everything we did and shook her head. And then I said, what is the problem? She said her mom said she was not good for university. And I wondered, what kind of talk is this? So there were people still coming, and I told her to wait aside while we were attending to the people coming. And by the time I spoke to her, I said, why did your mom tell you something like this? She said, you are not good enough. Why? She said, I don't know. Okay, did your mommy go to school? Did your mommy go to university? He said, no. Wow. So do you like what we are doing here? She said, yes, I like it. That's why I'm here. I said, okay, go back and tell your mommy that you are very good and good enough. You know, it sounds funny, but you can't imagine for that girl to open her mouth and say something like that. Her mom told her she was not good enough. I'm not critiquing the mom, but you can imagine the impact of the words we say on our children, the impact of our actions, and how it translates into people believing things that may not necessarily be true. So Connecting with communities, gives us that opportunity to do things like that. It's not only the science, but there are other dimensions of the science, dimensions of the engagement that will actually transform things and hopefully transform lives. And then here we have an opportunity to engage with the refugee communities. Here it's important for us to see that there are people with different skills. This is my colleague from the university, Professor Amanda Bamford. So here we collected a sample, did the project, and those people decided they will print on T-shirts. You can see the water louse, and then there is there are leeches and worms and different kind of organisms they found. And we classify them because in order to make things simple, we call the organisms that are sensitive to pollution the good, the not so good, we call them the bad, and then those organisms you find in terrible conditions, we call them the ugly. So not to let us forget that you can see at the base of these slides, I was putting the UN Sustainable Development Goals that tie into some of the things we are doing. The concept of education, the concept of reduced inequalities, the concept of partnership. So connecting with refugee communities that are coming from their different countries through the arts project, community art project, helps us as scientists, helps us as individuals to be able to reach out to people who also can share their experiences, their lived experiences, and actually gives us opportunity for collaboration we may not even know exists. And then we also have opportunity to think about our older adults, to think about the well-being of our people who are aging, our granddaddies, our grandmummies, an opportunity to give back to the community. This is an opportunity we had with the what they call the River Guidance. So the River Guidance were organizing this event at Stockport in Hazel Grove. So we went there and then we connected with the older adults. You will see there are young people here. Some of them were just curious and then we came along. So what happens here is that with this kind of group, we're able to bridge the gap between the old and the young. And therefore, there are skills we will learn from our older adults that we do not know, that it will take us years of experience to be able to bridge that, to have that kind of understanding. But it bridges the gap, and then we're able to see how we can live impactful lives in protecting our systems. You see, this man, is retired, but you can see that a bit of curiosity is also good for the brain. In other words, these are good for our well-being. And then we have opportunity to connect with people. We connect with women of diverse skills, diverse experience, women from either from the grassroots or from the professionals. So here we have opportunity to discuss, have scintillating discussions about the research we do, about the research we do not do, about so many things that actually link to thinking integratively on what we can achieve. So here was an opportunity to create awareness. Here was an opportunity to bring people together so that through our coming together, having discussions, having presentation, listening to talks, and then building confidence, we also bring an opportunity for people to contribute back into the communities they belong. It is also an opportunity to know that, yes, we can actually contribute and people can listen to us. These are some of the things we can do. And in that way, we are also helping to reduce inequalities and then educate people as well as empower ourselves and our children. And so this brings us to that aspect where we're all in this together. It's interesting. You see, I saw this picture, this icon I'm using now on Google. And it says, we are all in this together, even if we can't hold hands right now. And I'm sure you will believe what we are saying. And I decided to use James chapter 2, verse 17, that faith without works is dead. Some of us will be believers. Some of us are believers. Some of us believe in the word of God. But it's interesting to say the word. It says faith without works is dead. So what happens here is that faithful people will be more inclined to cooperate, cooperate to manage both the living and the non-living parts of our ecosystem, the living, which are organisms that are alive, and the non-living, the earth, the planet, the water, the air, the land, to be able to work to protect the shared ecosystems. And that is by thinking of the health and the welfare of other human beings now and for the future. This is important because if we are going to protect our systems, we are all in this together. The challenges that are happening, the challenges of pollution, the challenges of drought, of climate change, of desertification, of erosion are affecting people everywhere. I'm sure we all know, and we're all recalling, and we're still getting out of it, that when there was the problem of the COVID-19, the virus, it happened somewhere small, but nobody believed that this was going to be a global problem. In other words, this concept of not in my backyard, I don't bother, I can mind my business, myself, my family, is no longer working. It's no longer working because this issue of the lockdown has actually taught us so many things that, we are all in this together. We can't afford to be careless. We can't afford to mind our business too much. We're all in this together. So all concerns about human welfare, about the protection of our environment, will be weighed in relation to the vulnerable, the disadvantaged, and those who are least able to sustain themselves within the ecosystem context. While we are considering the vulnerable, we are considering the disadvantaged, please, let's not also forget that those who have the facilities or the resources or the money to do things will also be taxed because it demands more for you to start investing in things that you normally could have for free. So please, it's important for us to know that faith without works is dead. So faithful people will have to think about negotiating between protecting what is living and what is not living. That is even including human beings, other parts of the environment, the biodiversity of our environment, the water, the air, and all of this, and then every other thing which we have said. We are all in this together. Yes, we have common problems that require common solutions, most likely based on the conditions we are, in order for us to be able to achieve a common good. So we now come to the concept of stewardship. So we are all in this together. So I just brought this slide so that we can understand. Sorry, I don't know if this keeps disturbing. I brought the slide so that it can give us a bit of thinking. You can see different hands trying to hold the globe like that. So environmental stewardship and the common good. And I refer to Genesis chapter 1, whereby in the different parts of the creation we saw, and God saw that it was good. It was good. Yes, it was good. And in other words, every good and perfect gift comes from God, and they are good. They are good. They are perfect. But we have in verse 26 of that Genesis chapter 1, and we have verse 28. I'm not going to say too much of it because I know it's been said, it's been used, the verse has been used before by some other people. But I will just read it, what verse 26 says. It says, and God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. The word I am emphasizing there is the concept of dominion. The concept of dominion, according to Thomas Aquinas, he says, God gives everybody natural dominion over his creatures, over his creation, while God maintains the absolute dominion. So in other words, this concept of trying to mind your business, it's not my business, is somehow shielding from responsibility. But because if there is the concept of dominion over the fish, and then here I have over every creeping thing. I have had that one because the creeping things that we see underwater are also part of what we have control over. And then we have verse 28. We have verse 28, which says, I'll read verse 28. It says, and God blessed them. And God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish, the sea, fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. My own catch in this place where I want to emphasize is the concept of subdue. Subdue, with other synonyms, it says to protect, to control, to govern, to suppress. In other words, our negative choices, our negative behaviors, our actions or inactions. So overall, to explain this concept of stewardship, we are looking at that we all have a responsibility. We all have a responsibility. We have been given a natural dominion, which is exercised and should be exercised by us. The concept of protection, control, govern within the space where we are. And God has the overall, the absolute dominion. So that by our cooperating with God in exhibiting our natural dominion, we actually carry out his plan and his purpose for him on this earth. So that's where the concept of stewardship comes in. So as we are still talking, we are called to be stewards. We are called to be stewards. And because we are called to be stewards, it might be difficult to swallow that we have dominion. And this is so big thing, how are we bringing the Bible into, understanding our responsibilities in our everyday life? If we have been called to have dominion and to subdue, it means we have a responsibility. It means we are called to make a difference in our families, environmental issues within the home. You can think about the waste management. Don't waste water. You can do without having too much shower. No, there are small things we can do within the home. Called to make a difference at work, called to make a difference in our communities, called to make a difference in the decisions we make. What are you doing now? When you start asking the question, what am I doing now? How am I doing it? Okay, what am I supposed to be doing? Okay, somebody is doing something, polluting the environment somewhere, and it is irritating me. How am I feeling? Those are calls. Those are calls for responsibility. Those are calls that actually help us to act. Those are calls for action. And that is where our stewardship starts. Our stewardship starts from where we are, not from anywhere else, from where we are. So what can we do? What can we do? How can we, be good environmental stewards while fulfilling the overall concept of the common good such that we do not leave anyone behind? We need to raise awareness. We need to be able to raise awareness. And raising awareness does not mean, just shouting or no, raising awareness can be very little. It could be encouraging others to know that God has created things, and by creating them because they are good, he has called us to be stewards. He has called us to protect them. He has called us to govern them. So our ways of acting, by raising our awareness through what we do, you can call others to responsibility. And then the next thing, because you now know by virtue of what you know, your mind is renewed, your mind is renewed. So because your mind is renewed, you'll be able to think logically, you'll be able to think strategically, you'll be able to think with a bit more, how do you use the word? You think with a bit more purpose. You think with purpose in mind. So that renewal of the mind is where you check your actions, the implications of your actions, the kind of decisions you make. And as you are doing so, your mind is being renewed from what you used to be to having an understanding of your responsibility, your purpose, and your potential action. You start changing the way you do things. And that change is the most significant thing. You start changing how you think, you change your heart, every sense of yours is renewed. And people around you will know that something has happened to you. And then we have participation and community engagement. There are so many projects going on in different places. I have heard in the past few weeks, there is the Echo Church. There are other groups in different churches. I heard of the United Reformed Church in Winslow, and then there is the Methodist, organizing this event. There is the Global Healing. There is also the Laudato Si Center that has been set up, in Manchester within the Salford Diocese to manage projects that are actually important for all of us. So we may not be able to do the big things, but we can plug into these groups, we can plug into these communities to see how we can work together. Each of us has a part to play. Each of us have an opportunity to do things. And there are also fora where they discuss interfaith, network, where they're able to think about how to protect the environment with different faith groups. So it's not only us. So bottom line is that we are not in this together. We can connect where we are. And then, because we are in a situation whereby we are looking to do something new, knowing that the concept of environmental challenge is not for one person, it's not for a group of people, it's not for the global south or global north. No, we need to be united. And the unity can also come in our language, the way we use our language, the way we communicate our language, the way we want to be inclusive of people who are not maybe as educated as we are, or who have a different kind of thinking, bringing them together so that we can be united to do things that are positive and possible for all of us. And so, for us to be able to do that, we need to start from where we are. And that means we have every opportunity to be able to contribute to change in our communities. We need to contribute to change in our society. So without saying so much about we are in this together, this is a case study of what the Methodist has been doing. The Methodist has organized this Praying for the Planet seminar, bringing diverse people to talk about their science in relation to prayer. We have a case study here of the Methodist Church that has been responsible for building communities over many years. The Methodists have the legacy of John Wesley, where they have the social gospel. They build communities, they build people, they welcome international people from all over the world. So in this case, this is an example of the Methodist International House in Manchester. This one is on Daisy Bank Road. And this house has welcomed people for more than 64 years. It's every year they have welcomed at least 80 students or 80 residents. So if we extrapolated 80 students or 80 residents since for the past 64 years, that is over 5,000 residents, including their friends who become friends of the house. We have their families who are also linked to these communities. And it's interesting that here you connect with people from more than 30 nations of the world. If you say, can I say from A, there is Afghanistan to Zimbabwe. You will have people, the dimensions of people you see, the wonderful people, the electricians, the plumbers, the builders, the cleaners, all of these people who, because they connect with this community, do overboard. They go overboard, contributing their time, their effort, their resources. Some of them even working more than the contracted hours. So apart from that, we have the students or the residents that come with their skills, with their dimensions of beauty, of creativity, to support the community. Here we have examples of some of the Methodists and some of the people who will be in this talk. We have Chris here, we have Angela, and then we have Dimitri, and some of other international people. If I'm to look at this picture, I can recognize a few people. If it is not from Romania, from Germany, from Afghanistan, it's so beautiful, from the Caribbean, from Poland, from China, Iran. You will just see that how you can be in Manchester and be connected to people even right here, connecting to their lived experiences of other people, connecting to the lived experiences, connecting to the challenges of those people, connecting to so many things that make people people. And that is part of the concept of the 5 Ps we were talking about in Sustainable Development Goals. And just to say that when a community like this is set up, you also have opportunities to see that other communities connect or plug in. For example, in this house, we understand clearly that during the lockdown, where majority of people lost their jobs, honestly, the Sikh community was continuously generous, bringing food every other day so that people are not hungry, people are not starving. And these are wonderful. So you can be in Manchester and be connecting internationally, dimensionally to people in various places. So these are some of the things that help us to think. It's some of these experiences we are unable to, it's not something we can say we can read in the book. It's better experienced because people come with their dimensions of interest, dimensions of opportunities, dimensions of how they think and how we can together make life better. It's important for us to know that we are all in this together. You know, God's creatures show the goodness of God based on their existence, their functionality, based on the values they bring. Their existence, that is one aspect, but then the also dimension is the fact that their functions, what they do. For those organisms I showed you, you see they perform the functions of consumption, of acting as predators, of cleaning up our systems. And all of them, both great and small, and human beings and diversity of human beings are beautiful. What have we said in summary? It's important for us to raise awareness. By raising awareness, either of our voice, of our time, or giving time to things, to issues that partake not only to us, but to our environment, produce scientific output as some of what I have done through my work, increase literacy, you connect. And then you engage and include diverse group of people, you are connecting. And then you are, through what you do, maybe in small ways, in big ways, you are connecting to shaping policies that can benefit many other people. And then I gave us an example of a case study of community that we're all in this together, and voluntary work. Through these small opportunities, we are connecting. So, and that brings me to the end of my first talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cecilia. That's been excellent and amazing to see your enthusiasm for this. And yeah, wow, it's great to hear you talking. We've got a little bit over time, but hopefully we've got a time for a couple of questions. Victor's asking, great work, Cecilia. What are some of the challenges you face with working with different communities? So is it easy to do this work? Do you find people are wanting to get engaged with the science, or are there difficulties?
Well, the issue is that, number one, how would I start explaining this? Is it difficult? The question is it difficult? First and foremost, you must know what you are looking for in a place. So you don't expect people to just accept you hook, line, and sinker like that. So before I go into this place, I try to enjoy what they enjoy. I try to find out what is it that interests them. It's as if you are doing how do you call it? A survey work. So you go there, not with the first aim of showing what I want to do, but like being part of a community, trying to exhaust into those areas, and then gradually you now feel confident to do something because they now trust you. So in terms of difficulty, I would say no. Because the first and foremost, I'm not going there with the aim of showing them what I want to do, but I go there with being part of a community and understanding, connecting with them, understanding what the issues are, and that is what informs what I want to do.
Okay, thanks. And perhaps a question from me. I can imagine this idea of citizen science is somewhere where we're getting yet another division between what happens in rich countries and what happens in poor countries. How does citizen science work in somewhere like Nigeria?
Well, it's interesting you're asking this question, because let me just tell you one thing. Those kind of talking about citizen science is a work in progress on the other side of the globe.
Yeah,
it's not something that has come to stay. It's something that is work in progress, and that means it's something that we need to start seeing a connection, having an understanding and awareness that it could be done. So that's where we are at.
Okay. Thanks very much. Right. Well, I'll as I say, we're a little behind the time, so I'll ask you to move, if I could just ask you to move on to the second part of your talk about your faith and the implications. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Here I just put the faith implications of my work, and some of these I have discussed in the past in the few slides. Here I have a Latin statement that says laborare est orare. That means to work is to pray. In other words, the dimensions of my work is also prayer itself, because I have an understanding of what I'm doing and I enjoy doing it. The connection I have with the people is also part of the prayers. Because if I connect with these people, I understand what their challenges are. I connect with the system. I understand what the problems are. And that is what informs what my result or what my corrections will be or what I need to do will be. So in that concept, it also informs my prayer. It informs, what I do in the course of prayer. So here I have put the concept of acts. And we said being good stewards, we have to act. We have to understand our responsibility, understand what we need to do, and then we act upon it. So having that understanding of your responsibility, your purpose, you are pushed and you are poised to act. So there are things that will be uncomfortable to you. Those are the things that push us into prayer. So in the course of the work, all the organisms I'm showing you, you can see that I was talking about the beauty, the wonder, the value, the goodness, the functionality. Those are the things I take to God in prayer. In terms of thanking God for the beauty, for the creativity, for the dimensions of these organisms, the intricacies, those are wonderful things. So that when you start praising God, it's like you are eulogizing God. You make him, you make his head swell up, you make him feel very good. So that's the concept of adoration. You see people on a daily basis, the people who make your life beautiful, the people who make you smile, the people who will purposely stop and say hello to you. Those are the people you take to God for adoration. And that's what I do. And then for confession, so when I do the adoration, there are things I should have done but have not done. There are things you see some people will deliberately squeeze paper and throw it on the main road. They just do what they like. Those things I may not be able to correct, even though I may have opportunity of correcting that person, but because I am careful of what those people will tell me, I just decide to be quiet. Those are the things I take to God in prayer, asking God for mercy. The places where I should have spoken that I failed to speak, the places where I shouldn't have spoken but I spoke, not only my own sins, the sins of other people, the people who deliberately pollute the environment, the people who deliberately make life difficult. I ask for mercy because we are all units of God's creation. None of us is perfect. We are all units. So all those kind of things that are not so perfect in terms of our humanness, I put them onto God, and ask God for mercy. And I believe he answers it. So after doing the adoration and the confession, then I start thanking God for the energy, for the vitality, for the ability to think, the ability to see even these issues, the ability to hear about these issues, the environmental issues, the pollution issues, the issues of people maybe having different challenges, that I can hear. And then I start thanking God for the small ways I can contribute. Honestly, those ways, the thanking God for the people who make maybe life difficult, who make life easy, because all of them are all creatures of God. And then I give God the thanks. I give God the thanks for the diversity, for the culture, for the intricacies, for the opportunities I have even to speak now. I thank God for it. And so all the other things that I can't handle, all the pain, all the people who make wrong decisions, or so many things, so many challenges, like the challenges I have mentioned in this talk, challenges of pollution, challenges of urbanization, challenges of increased agricultural activities that actually pollute the environment, other challenges whereby people feel they don't care, they don't give a toss about anybody. I bring those petitions to God in prayer that God should touch them, God should do this, God should do that, God should do this, and then I wrap up. And so those are the ways I reflect on prayer. We pray simple, and then we hand over to God, let God answer them through the help of his Holy Spirit. And so this brings me to this end of talk, because in conclusion of all what I've said, that by reflecting on the beauty of creatures, our environment, we connect with the Creator, who is God. And to connect with others effectively is to pray, not only when we kneel down and close our eyes and do these things. No, by actually doing this connection is prayer. Because by that, we're also obeying the commandment of love your neighbor as yourself. You know, not better than yourself, but love your neighbors. So you are thinking of other people. And in this kind of thinking of other people, you are thinking about their challenges and how you can help. That's a prayer. So prayer is a means of communication, is a means of connection and outpouring from creator to the creator and vice versa. We pray to God and he also speaks. And then, yes, he speaks in our situations. The discomfort you feel about pollution or people taking things for granted, the discomfort are a call for prayer too. So to pray is an act of faith, and faith with action is not dead. And so we are called to be stewards. We are called to be environmental stewards. We have responsibilities, we have a purpose, irrespective of what we do, where we are, and we are directly connected because of who we are directly connected to what we are meant to be doing, so that we become co-creators with the Almighty God. And so before we say we are all in this together, I will enjoin us to start from where we are. What can you do? What are the small things you can do? What are you going to change? And please don't forget, we are all in this together, wherever you are. So this brings me to the end of this talk. And thank you. I would like to acknowledge Richard Baker. Thanks for inviting me. It's been wonderful. And then I acknowledge all the people whose pictures I have used in this place. The Blast Fest, Community Perspectives, the University of Manchester, my Department of Earth and Environmental Science, the Methodist International House, the wardens, the residents, you know, the cleaners, and all those who have helped to build that community, the River Guardians UK, and then the Community Arts Project in Salford, and of course, the Women in Environmental Science. And for all of you who have listened today, thank you.
Thanks very much, Cecilia. Again, a wonderful exposition of how all these things come together. And it certainly made me think quite considerably about what I'm doing, and particularly this idea of starting where we are. I think some of us can get overwhelmed by the situation, and starting where we are, I think, is a really strong way of moving forward. Anyway, we're going to move into breakout rooms. We're a little bit behind the time, so I'm suggesting that we perhaps spend 10 minutes in breakout rooms rather than 15 minutes. So you'll probably end up in breakout rooms with different people to the ones you've been in before. So clearly introduce yourselves to each other. But then we're suggesting that you might like to think about 3 questions. First of all, have a reflection on anything that's struck you about Cecilia's talks. Then you might want to think in what ways you're connected to others by challenges to the environment. A key theme of Cecilia's talk is that connectedness. And then maybe thinking about how you can work, and particularly how you can work with others to address some of these challenges. So I'll invite Matt to divide you into breakout rooms. If you don't want to go into a room, you don't have to, but if you want to, please accept the invitations when they come now. And okay, everybody, so hope you've had some good chats in that. If you've got anything arising out of that you'd like to mention, you think anything that's come out of the groups that you'd like to sort of share with the other groups, put it in chat. But perhaps most importantly, if you've got anything you'd like to ask, anything further you'd like to ask Cecilia, please put it in the chat and we'll ask her. We were chatting in our own little breakout room, and I was saying how the little quote about our work being our prayer, I think was very important for busy people. And I was sharing the story that when I was approaching our first speaker, you remember Mike Moorcroft all those weeks ago, I asked him to talk about his prayer. He said, "I don't have time to pray. I'm working all the time." And it struck me that it's great to hear Cecilia telling him that he was actually praying by participating in that work. So, yeah. So we've got a question from Christian Medupin. So Daryl talked about desalination in our group chat. How does desalination affect our water system, Cecilia?
Well, I will only be very brief because the concept of desalination is a process that will take place in places where they can afford to undergo that process. And one of these places is in Saudi Arabia or in the Middle East, where they have not enough water. So desalination is a very expensive project, and it's only going to be invested in by people or nations that have the resources to do so. It's a good one, but quite expensive.
Yeah. Yes, I lived in Melbourne for some time, and the Victorian government had invested a lot of money in desalination plants to try and protect themselves from drought. I think there were problems with what happens to the salt after it's been desalinated. I think there were concerns that was polluting some water sources, which is an extra sort of element of
burden,
what was going on. Yeah. Okay, give a little bit more time in case anybody's got a final question. Okay, but otherwise I'll move into our closing devotions now. So I'm going to just set myself up to share my screen. So again, Andrew Pratt, who has been writing hymns for us, he's still got caring responsibilities, which means he can't join us live, but he has written another hymn in relation to the abstract that Cecilia sent in. So I'm going to use that going to read that as our closing devotion. Dry, cracked and crazed, the waterbed lies empty. The earth is thirsty, rain is slow to come. This news is hidden. Floods have filled the headlines. The prophets now not heard may well be dumb. This is the earth, the ground of life, our being, our home to share, to nurture and protect. A gift of God for us and all God's creatures, to use our knowledge, work to good effect. As people wait, the wells of life are barren. How long, O God, before your people learn that we must live and love and work together to answer needs that science can discern? The brightest light of wisdom dims in sadness if we ignore the needs of all the earth. If selfishly we dominate creation, deny the love once given at our birth. Great God, Earth Mother, Father of creation, we plead and cry that you will hear each voice. Then motivate your people. Bring fresh waters till earth can sing and once again rejoice. Amen. So a fitting conclusion for our service, for our talk today. I'd like to once more thank Cecilia very much for all she's had to say to us. If anybody would like to express their thanks in the chat, I'm sure Cecilia would really love to read those. And just to say that our final session will be next Thursday, the 1st of July. When actually one of Cecilia's colleagues at the University of Manchester, Dr. Admos Chimhowu, will be talking. He comes from the Global Development Department at the university and is going to be talking about how we can develop policy for sustainable development. So I'm really looking forward to that talk, as I've looked to all the other talks. So thanks very much for coming this evening, and we'll see you next Thursday for the final session. Thanks very much. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.